Welcome to this week's edition of the Belau Report. I'm Jane Belau. When we are recording this, it is 22 days until we vote. We have a candidate with us, the Republican candidate for U.S. Senate, and we're glad to welcome Karin Housley. And we welcome you to the southern part of the state again, and tell us why you decided to run for the Senate.
Well, thank you so much for having me first. Your show is very famous throughout the whole state, not just here in the southern part of the state. People watch you online too, Jane. You're very, very famous, so I'm excited to be here, and thanks for having me. I'm running for the United States Senate for the seat that was vacated by Al Franken. There are 2 years left on his seat, and I'm running against my opponent, Tina Smith, who was appointed by Governor Dayton. I'm running to be a new voice for Minnesota. I am a small business owner. I have been married to my high school sweetheart, Phil, for 33 years. We have 4 kids and 2 grandkids, and I've been representing the East Metro Stillwater Forest Lake area in the Minnesota Senate for the last 6 years. I want to go to Washington, D.C. to fight for our our elder population. I've been working in the Minnesota Senate protecting our seniors from a very mismanaged government Department of Health, taking care of our seniors. We need to fix our healthcare system, make healthcare more affordable. A government-run healthcare solution is not a solution, and I want to keep the economy going the way it is. Things have really turned around in the last couple of years. Lowest unemployment in 30 years, and the biggest tax reform in over 30 years. So I want to continue the good things that are happening and get there to fix our health care and take care of our seniors. And again, I'm a pro-life and a pro-Second Amendment, so to make sure that we keep fighting for those issues also.
Okay, tell me a little about your background for our viewers.
Okay. Born and raised in South St. Paul. Both my parents were public school teachers. My dad he taught for 30 years at South St. Paul High School. He was my gym and history teacher, and was a small business owner. I started a business in the Stillwater area, real estate business, and grew it to be a pretty successful real estate company in Minnesota and in Wisconsin. Completely content running my real estate business, supporting my husband in his career. He's now the head coach of the Buffalo Sabres hockey team. He played for 21 years in the NHL, and he's now in the Hockey Hall of Fame and the head coach of the Buffalo Sabres. So I was completely content growing my small business and supporting my husband and raising our 4 kids and spending time with the 2 grandkids until 2010. I got very frustrated with the way our state and our country were going when it came to the tax structure. And I felt like the government wanted to put all of us small businesses out of business. We were in a housing recession, and it was really frustrating. It was April 15th, and I had to write that check to the government, and I had $4 left in my business checking account, and I knew something was wrong here in the state of Minnesota. So I did what any sane person would do. You just say, I'm going to run for the state senate. But that was the genesis behind why I ran. I knew we had to do something and do it quickly to help our small businesses and to keep employing people. You know, we need to help our job creators, and for so many years, it wasn't until 2 years ago when the president was elected did things really start to turn around here. So ran in 2010. I lost in 2010 by 1%. Ran again in 2012. And I won by 1%, and I knew I had to represent a swing district. So I listened to everybody, not just the Republicans that voted for me, but also the Democrats and the Independents and even those who didn't vote, because it was very important to listen to everybody and bring those issues. I think sometimes politicians lose sight of what their job is that they're supposed to be doing. It's not all about you. It's about representing what the people of your district or your state want. And so I did. I listened to everybody, and I ran again in 2016, and I won by 25%. So it really works to listen to everybody.
And that's how you met Senator Senjem from Rochester.
I had the fortunate situation where I got to sit right next to Senator Dave Senjem, who represents this greater Rochester area, and he was my mentor for the first 4 years, and now I sit right across the aisle from Senator Senjem, and he has helped me understand all of the issues of Rochester, and just really been a mentor when it comes to healthcare legislation.
So you're willing to move to Washington to pursue this, help the small business?
You know what? There's the number one issue that I hear from people is they're so sick and tired of politicians, of extremism, of people digging their heels in and fighting, that that's one of the reasons I'm running too, because Tina Smith in Washington, D.C. right now is doing nothing but obstruct. Any policies that are put before her, she's voting against. Even Justice Kavanaugh, it was the second that the president nominated him to be his next Supreme Court justice. She had a big protest rally and said that she will be voting no. She hadn't even learned anything about him, hadn't even met him, hadn't heard him in any of the hearings, and she was going to vote against him. So that's what people don't want. They don't want somebody who is going to take the extremism to the next level to obstruct anything that could be happening. So I won't move to Washington, D.C. ever. I will stay here in Minnesota, and I will go out there Monday morning and come back Thursday night and represent the people. I will bring the issues of Minnesota to Washington, D.C. and fight for our farmers and fight for our healthcare industry and fight for our job creators in Washington, D.C., which hasn't been done in a while.
So instead of living in Washington, you'll live on the airline, right?
Delta will be my shuttle, yes.
Okay. When you served in the state Senate, what are you most proud of?
I'm very proud of my ability to work across the aisle, and I really got along with everybody. There are so many issues that don't have a letter behind them, an R or a D, that are just issues that are important to the people in your district or of the state, that you have to find some common ground with everybody in the state legislature, in the state Senate. So I'm very proud of working across the aisle. 90% of my bills were bipartisan. I got along with so many of the Democrat senators, and we worked very, very well together. Even so, some of the issues that would be perceived to be Democrat issues, I worked really, really hard with my Republican caucus to show them that these were important to my district and the state and how it would work for everybody. So that's one of the things I'm most proud of is I don't dig my heels in and scream at the top of the podium. I will fight for what I believe in, my conservative principles and my core values, but I am not going to fight for the sake of fighting. That's not what people sent me to the Minnesota Senate or are sending me to Washington, D.C. to do. They're sending me there to work hard for the people that I represent and get good things done for them, which hasn't been done by Tina Smith.
Is your campaign very oriented about traveling about the state?
Oh yeah, we have, and I have lived, Jane, in. I've moved 17 different times from 1982 to 2003 when I started, go figure, a real estate business because of my husband's time in the NHL. And I have lived in so many different states, and I can tell you, bar none, we have the greatest state in the country. It is so diverse from the manufacturing that we have here in the state. From Hutchinson is the manufacturing capital of the state. Rochester, to be the world leader in healthcare right here in Rochester, Minnesota. Everybody looks to Minnesota and Rochester and the Mayo Clinic folks on how we're doing things here. And just meeting the folks from the farmers, listening to what their issues are, and how excited they are that we finally have a president who's putting their issues at the forefront of a campaign and an administration, fighting for trade and fighting for the farmers when it comes to trade that hasn't been fair for decades. So it's so much fun to meet everybody across the state, such nice people. And when I started this back in January, when Al Franken was forced to resign, everybody said, it's going to be brutal. They're going to be really, really tough on you. It's only the far left extremists that to try to throw everything at the wall and it's not sticking. But the real people on the ground in Minnesota are so absolutely wonderful and supportive, and they are looking for a new voice, somebody who hasn't been a political operative like Tina Smith for years. So I am having so much fun with, like you said, just 22 days left, and by the time everybody sees it, could be tomorrow. But having a lot of fun meeting and greeting people and getting their support, and I promise them I will be working hard for you in Washington, D.C.
Are you finding concerns from the citizens about the incivility that's happening this time around?
It's the divisiveness that is happening in Congress is despicable. It is really especially what they did to Justice Kavanaugh. I felt for his family. I even felt for Dr. Ford, because anytime there's a sexual harassment allegation, those should be heard. And they did exactly what should have been done. She had her time, she was heard, but for the nastiness that was thrown at Justice Kavanaugh, it really is going to detract anybody from running for any sort of public service when anybody can throw stuff at you and you're guilty until you prove yourself innocent, even if it's something in your yearbook from 30 years ago. It's really gotten that bad, and Minnesotans have smartened up to that, and they aren't buying into all of that. They can kind of see beyond the nastiness, but they do want somebody who is common sense and a small business owner and a mom and who has done really good things and has a track record of doing really good things, which I have. But they want you to go there and not be one of those crazy extremists, to work for the people here in Minnesota and do good things at a common sense level and really listen to the people.
What is your view of the greatest challenge facing the country?
Two of the greatest challenges facing the country right now is Social Security and Medicare. Both of those programs, Medicare is set to run out in 2024, and having worked on aging issues, when I got to the Minnesota Senate, there was never a committee that was devoted to just the issues that were facing our aging population. So I pushed to get the Aging and Long-Term Care Committee for issues that affect our elderly. And we've got thousands turning, the baby boomers are all now turning 65 and older, and these issues are getting greater and greater. But we will run out of Social Security in 2024. And that is an issue that we cannot make partisan. We cannot use that as a political football to throw it back and forth and continue to blame each side. It has to be all hands on deck. Social Security is 2034. Medicare is 2024. And so Medicare is going to run out of money tomorrow. They keep saying in the future, it's tomorrow. And so we have to fix the efficiencies or the inefficiency with improper payments that Medicare is doing right now. $36 billion of improper payments every year by Medicare. So that's one of the huge issues facing our country right now is Medicare and Social Security, and we have to stop playing politics with it and blaming and really put all heads together to fix that for our seniors.
Do you have a solution?
Yeah. Well, the solution is like Medicare. That's $36 billion right there. I don't believe that we need to raise people's taxes, or we don't need to privatize Social Security. What we have to do is find government waste, which there is a ton of it, especially when you come from owning your own small business and you know where every single penny goes in your business, and the bottom line is you can't spend more than you bring in. Our federal government, under the 8 years under Obama, spend, tax and spend. My opponent has a nickname of Taxantina. She's right from that same ilk, tax and spend. And we have to find inefficiencies in government. There's so many programs that aren't working that we continue to fund that we need to stop funding if they aren't working and channel that money towards Social Security and Medicare. The problem is we have more people on Social Security than we have working. So we need to get more people to work to help pay into Social Security and find inefficiencies in government where we can help fund it.
How about the difficult issue of immigration?
Yes.
You have a need for skilled workers on the one hand, and on the other hand, you have concern about people who are not here legally, who may be criminally intended, if you will.
Immigration, I spent 12 days at the Minnesota State Fair, and The top 4 issues were jobs in the economy, healthcare, immigration, and trade. And immigration, we have to secure our borders. We have to know who's here to keep our country safe. My grandfather was an immigrant from Yugoslavia. He came to Minnesota to work in the meat packing plants in South St. Paul, but he came here legally. He came through Ellis Island, he went to the Iron Range and came down to South St. Paul. And we need immigrants here. We want the best and brightest from every country around the world, but we want them here legally. And part of the issue is our immigration system takes so long. There's so much bureaucracy and so much red tape that you can hear it from the farmers who have their H-2A visas for their temporary workers to come over here to work on the farm. And if they don't get their paperwork done in time and the immigrants don't get here for 3 weeks, they've missed planting season. So part of the reason we have so many people coming through into the United States illegally is we haven't processed the paperwork in a timely manner. We have so many industries that need workers right now. Every single one of them in the nursing homes and assisted living, whether it's construction, whether it's the farmers, we need more people to employ here. And part of that solution is to have our immigrants come here, but we have to have them come here legally, and to do that we secure our borders and get more resources to our borders to get immigrants here.
What is the first thing you'll do if you're elected to the Senate when you get there in January?
The first thing I'm going to do is I've told Leader Mitch McConnell that I want to sit on the Agriculture Committee. I was born and raised a city girl, but Minnesota is in the top 5 states in the country for agriculture production, and it's very, very important to Minnesota for our economy, and it's also important for our national security is our ag production and from our corn growers to our pork producers to our soybean growers. Really, really important that our farmers are represented in the United States Senate. So I'm going to get on that Ag Committee and get to work to help our farmers. And then I want to sit on the Veterans Committee also. My father was a veteran of the Korean War, and I sit on the Veterans Committee in the Minnesota Senate. Keeping those programs for our veterans and taking care of our veterans, those who fought to keep us safe and secure here at home, is another committee I want.
Do you have other acquaintances so far who are either running for the Senate or in the U.S. Senate, so that as you form coalitions to help pass your bills, you've got a ready group of people that's going to support you? I
absolutely do. It's which has been part of this whole journey. I sometimes pinch myself. I can't believe how much I've learned just since January and all the people that I've met. It's mostly in the states that surround us. South Dakota's Senator John Thune, Senator Joni Ernst from Iowa, Senator Kevin Kramer. He will be senator up in North Dakota. Those that in the states that surround us are those that I've sort of formed a coalition with already. Leah Vukmir's running over in Wisconsin. She's a really good friend of mine. Also, I do have the support of Senator Tom Tillis. Senator Marco Rubio is coming to town. Senator McConnell. All eyes on Washington are watching this race here in Minnesota, because they too want to win this race to make sure that Minnesota is represented. They haven't been represented fairly for over 10 years. So people are really looking for a new voice in Washington. And I will have even when the president came here to Rochester, it was an honor to be able to tell him what the issues were here on the ground. And that's something that Tina Smith or Amy Klobuchar, neither one of them have, is a direct line to the president to say, hey, pay attention to us here in Minnesota, which we said, hey, pay attention to us here in Minnesota, come to Minnesota, and he's come twice now during our election. So it's really exciting to know that the president and his administration put the issues of Minnesota on the map that are important enough for them to pay attention to, and I will continue to fight with the other senators to make sure that Minnesota is paid attention to.
Did the president's tax bill help the Minnesota farmers?
Actually, the president's tax bill has helped the whole country, just in relieving some of the regulations. What I hear from the farmers is, over the 8 years of the Obama administration, the overburdensome regulations that were put on the farmers. For example, if you're a corn grower and there's a really, really heavy rain, and in the middle of your field you get a big puddle, the Democrats wanted to, that was called the Waters of the U.S., WOTUS, wanted to legislate that pond in the middle of their field like it was the Great Lakes. And so there were these regulations that we've lost so many of our farmers because of these overburdensome regulations. So it really did help the farmers, and it helped everybody else. It helped our job creators. They repatriated money that they had overseas and brought it back into the United States to help create jobs. So it really did help. And here in the state of Minnesota, we need to get a tax reform bill to get in line with what they did at the federal level.
You know, you mentioned Social Security and Medicare, but so many of the private companies and local governments are in trouble with their pensions. What can be done?
Yeah, and that we worked really hard at the state level for pension reform, and we helped out quite a bit last year. And that is one of the questions that I hear from seniors also is, you know, our pension is in trouble, and we have to figure out a way to come in and save those programs. It's not the state or the federal government's responsibility, but something has to be done because people paid into these, and that you're expecting that for your retirement, my parents included. My dad was on the teacher's retirement pension. So we do have to do whatever we can to make sure that those pensions are in place for those who are expecting them.
Okay, all right. Our education programs and our trade education are two needs that we're facing in the States and our businesses are facing. What can we do about them?
When it comes to public education, I think the best place for those decisions to be made is at the local level. Nobody knows better how to educate the kids in a community more than the parents of that community, the school board of that community. We don't need Washington, D.C. telling us how to educate our kids in Rochester. The people and the parents and the administrators in Rochester know best how to do that. And when it comes to higher education, we need to, a four-year degree isn't for everybody. Back in the day when I went to school, that was the only way is post high school education was you have to get a four-year degree to get ahead. It's not that way anymore. We need to really encourage programs to help our trade schools and start these at the high school level. There are so many high schools around the state where it's a public-private partnership where you have large corporations like 3M coming into a high school and having a welding wing of the school, or like we used to have shop class where they didn't, all of a sudden shop class went away. Shop class is coming back, and to encourage these types of trade careers and community and technical colleges, that is a pathway to earning a great living and a great career. It's a four-year degree is not for everybody, and it's not the answer always, and to really encourage programs to help two-year technical degrees.
We can't expect you in a first term to correct everything that's wrong with the public education. But what kind of advice do you have in the state of Minnesota for people when they're talking about training and whether the unions support it or not? What do you do to teach some of these skills that they don't get enough of in liberal arts colleges?
And I think we've got some good programs at the state level to encourage incentives for kids to go into those sort of trade programs. We've got, I know the carpenters, there's a very good program that encourages the carpenters for kids to go to that sort of trade school. And I think also some sort of loan forgiveness program or loan incentive if you're an employer and a student graduates and they have a large loan. To loan forgiveness or being paid by that employer is another program that's out there. Not state loan forgiveness, but paid for by the employer.
We only have 5 minutes
Goes so
left.
fast, Jane.
So in the 5 minutes, can you tell us what is your most important goal as you propose to go to the U.S. Senate?
My most important goal is to really be a new voice for Minnesotans and get things done. I too am sick of career politicians. My opponent is a career politician, and the obstruction that's happening. I think it's very, very important to listen to the people of Minnesota, whatever state or city it is, Rochester or Thief River Falls or Hutchinson or Duluth, to really listen to what the issues are and bring those issues to Washington, D.C. Healthcare reform is #1 on that list. And then keeping the economy going. People don't want to go backwards. They want to continue the way things are going with 4.2% economic growth. It's extremely important that we have somebody here in Minnesota really listening to the people and that has been a small business owner, continues to be a small business owner and job creator, that can bring the real Minnesota values to Washington, D.C. That hasn't been done for a while in this seat, and it's extremely important that you put all partisan politics aside and work for the people that you represent, and that's what I want to do.
I want you to take 2 minutes and tell, it's your chance for a message directly to the voters in this area.
Thank you so much, Jane, for having me. Again, I am Karin Housley, running for the United States Senate for the seat that was vacated by Al Franken. You have a choice to make November 6th. You can either vote for a new voice, a small business owner, a mother of 4 and a grandmother of 2, and or you can vote for a career politician who is entrenched in being a political operative and former vice president of Planned Parenthood. That's your 2 choices. One wants to push for single-payer health care, which is really a government-run health care, which doesn't work. And I want to support health care choices where you can have your own doctor and where we can make health care affordable through competition. I want to support innovative companies like the Mayo Clinic, one of the greatest organizations in the world when it comes to healthcare. If you go single payer, that would be no more of these sort of innovative ideas. Again, I want to go to Washington, D.C. to represent all of you in the United States Senate, hear what you have to say, what your issues are, fight for healthcare, jobs in the economy, for fair trade, and to make sure that we keep our borders safe and secure. And I will also fight for the unborn. I'm pro-life, and I also fight to support our Second Amendment. So I'm Karin Housley, running for the United States Senate, and please vote for me on November 6th. My website is housleyforsenate.com, and I am counting on you. Thank you.
Karin Housley, candidate for United States Senate from Minnesota, and we expect to see more of you and to hear more from you.
Thank you again for having me, Jane.
Okay, thank you, our viewers, for being with us this week and for your interest in the election and the people who are proposing to run the country and the state of Minnesota and the school board and the city of Rochester and the areas around Rochester. But take care. Have a good week. We'll be with you again next week, same time, same station. Good night.